Life will give you whatever experience is most helpful for the evolution of your consciousness. How do you know this is the experience you need? Because this is the experience you are having at this moment. So I really love this quote because it really is a comforting quote when I'm going through something painful or challenging, because it really is a reminder for me that no matter how hard something is or the struggles that I'm going through, that there's always a deeper lesson behind it. I feel that pain can be a really effective teacher if you allow the lessons to kind of come through. You know, when we go to the doctors when we're feeling sick and to try to find a solution for it, I feel like when we have psychological or emotional pain, that's a sign for us to kind of find a solution as well, to reflect and go inward and to basically figure out what the lesson is within us, I was in an unhealthy and dysfunctional relationship when I was younger, and that was such a painful experience. It was such an emotional roller coaster, but that experience really was there to teach me a lot of things about myself. Even though it was painful going through like all the lies, all the fighting, we were constantly breaking up and getting back together, is really dysfunctional. And I even had, so many suspicions of him cheating and all that stuff, but never found out until after the relationship had ended that I was right about my intuition that I didn't listen to during the relationship. And so one of the biggest lessons, being in a unhealthy relationship like that taught me was basically how I had this belief that I didn't deserve any better, that this was all I was going to get. And so I felt like I had to try to make this work, unfortunately, because it lasted a lot longer than it should have, this relationship. But I couldn't see the lessons early enough. And so it was only after a few years of being in this dysfunctional relationship, I was able to kind of reflect, go inward, and kind of pull out the lessons from that relationship, that dysfunctional relationship. And so I also saw that I really had I'd even say maybe no standards for myself. I really had no self-respect. I basically stayed in the relationship hoping that things would be different, hoping that he would change, that, we could maybe work it out or whatever. But I didn't trust him, I caught him lying a few times, and I thought I could make it work, even though trust is such an important value for me. And open communication is an important value. And he didn't practice any of those things, even after all the times that I've caught him lying and all that stuff. And so I didn't respect myself. I basically allowed him to treat me that way, and I put up with it. So, I had to reflect on, the question of how was I responsible? What was I responsible in this relationship? And so what I was responsible with was allowing all these things to happen and to be okay with it after, or try to convince myself I was okay with it after. I basically just enabled it. I continued allowing it to happen, instead of putting my foot down and having some healthy boundaries. I really had no boundaries, I had preferences, but I did not exercise them. After that relationship, it taught me that, I'm allowed to have boundaries. I'm allowed to be with someone that also values open communication and that I can trust. And, it's okay to want to be with someone who is emotionally mature and all that stuff. And so even though that experience was really challenging and an emotional roller coaster, it did teach me a lot after I had gotten out of it and gotten to give myself space. I didn't date for a while after that. I knew that I needed to take a break and just kind of just go inward and reflect on what the hell happened, because that was such a dysfunctional relationship. It was crazy. I don't know why I wasted so many years on that relationship. It should have been done way earlier, but I know that it lasted however long it needed to, because there were lessons that I needed to really, really learn. And so luckily, I did grow from that. I was able to evolve my consciousness, I guess you could say. I grew, and I have better standards for myself. I have a lot more self-respect, and I definitely have a lot more preferences in a relationship and values that I care for, that I'm very fortunate now to be in a very good relationship, be in a very healthy relationship. And so I feel like all that pain and misery that I went through to learn those lessons was definitely worth it, because it set the stage for my next relationship to basically, have better, standards for myself. So even though that was a painful experience and an emotional roller coaster, it did help me grow. It really did force me to reflect inward and to be more introspective about, what my role was in that relationship. And so even though it was challenging and quite the experience, I'm so glad that I went through it and that I was able to pull out the lessons from it. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.